Hello and welcome to another episode of Pokémath. My name is Stefan Eriksson, and today, in episode number 62, I'm joined by the one and only Tord. I've actually caught him in between some coaching sessions here, so hopefully we just have enough time to finish a little discussion today, because as you may have seen, we're going to talk about the current, tournament structure, format. I'm not actually quite sure what to call it, but the whole best of three discussion. Let's put it like that. And I reached out to Tord because I saw some interesting tweets, and I thought, this is an excellent discussion point, so welcome, Tord.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Always great to have you here, and I'm really happy I could find a hole in your calendar. Actually, I think we're both pretty difficult because, well,
Yeah.
it's we even in the same time zone, and sometimes it becomes a little difficult to plan even like that.
No,
But,
for sure.
But let's get straight to it. So we have like the Pokemon community. There's always something to talk about, and well, today's topic is a lot of people are, to say in a best way I can say it, not really happy with best of 350 minutes. That's kind of what triggered this discussion, and so I thought have a talk, and let's start with what is the current scenario right now, Tord. So you as a top player, how do you view, say, best of three at big events at the moment? What are your thoughts on this, like the current status?
So best of three in general is a really good idea, right? Like you play more games of Pokemon. That's what we want, right?
More games,
so yeah, you decrease variance, which is a good thing again, right? But what is currently in the spotlight, right, is the problem of best of three as well, which is there's no incentive for both players to actually want to finish the series because as talked about in a tweet I had recently, there will always be at least one player that benefits a lot from a game not finishing, right? Like it could be the second game or it could be game 3 as well, right? Like one player will get more points if that one game does not finish.
Makes sense, yeah. And
so
but why can't we just play faster then? Why not just play faster?
I mean, if both players played faster, then like technically you could try to finish, all the games, right? But a game of Pokemon naturally takes about, 20, 25 minutes, especially among these, very complicated high level decks we have in format like Gardevoir and Lost Box, right?
Yeah.
Of course, there like a lot of other decks take a lot of time as well, right? But these are probably like the biggest sinners in terms of, using time because they just have a lot of actions and difficult decisions.
I completely agree with that. Anybody who watched any games involving these two decks, in particular if they play against each other, we're not talking 20-25 minutes anymore, I think, for one full game.
Yeah, it can definitely be more as well. So it's difficult to have 3 complete games finish, right? That's sort of the thing here.
But
you can't do it, but it's just difficult. It doesn't create an environment where you focus fully on the game. You're having to focus a lot on the timer as well, right? So there's like some pros and cons here.
Yeah, but just imagine. So I could think that or believe that we have 50 minutes. Say a natural game of Pokemon is 20-25 minutes. Isn't it designed perfectly if that was the case? That suppose I win 2 straight games and within 50 minutes I win the match, and if it's not even meant to play a third game in that sense, right? Because suppose we just win one each, then time's up, and then it's a tie. Doesn't that seem fair, or is it because the idea is that we should play all 3 games, or what do you think?
I mean, in a way, you could say that it's fair as well, but then you have the point distribution, right? Which means that the tie is like you get 1 point for a tie, right? Yeah. And you get 0 for a loss and 3 for a win. So it's 3 times as good for you to win a match than it is for you to tie a match, right? So you're much closer to a loss when you tie again. So it's better for both players to finish the match, like on average at least, right? That's also say the advice I would give to most people, like in the tournament setting, instead of say safely tying a match, right? If you try to rush through the third game and let it finish, then on average you get 1.5 point at least, right? Because like say your expected outcome is 50-50 in the last one, right?
Yeah.
And you get 3 points and you get 0 points and averages out to like 1.5, which is more than the tie still. So
I like this theoretical concept you bring on here about risk aversion, essentially, or say expected value, sorry. But then indeed, risk aversion plays in. People tend to be, say, risk averse a bit, and depending on when in the tournament and how far you are. And like you say, this is assuming the matchup is 50-50. Of course, if I know my matchup is pretty decent, I will be more inclined to just, pick up my pace and risk it for the biscuit, say. But it all makes sense. But let's look at what tools do we actually available right now? Because if I'm a tournament organizer, I actually don't have that many options right now. If I run a Swiss plus Top Cut, first and foremost, any single elimination game in Top Cut must be best of 3. So your hands are tied there. I'm actually just unsure about the timer there because I believe then you can vary the time a bit for how long you make the games. But that's not the concern here per se. We're talking more about, say, Swiss rounds, right?
Because, I guess I don't think anyone has any issues with the Top Cut rules because that's 75 minutes best of 3 usually, and that's enough time to actually finish the series, right? Like properly for the most part.
So don't we have a solution there already? We just make every round 75 minutes, job done, and clap our hands and move on. No.
I mean, that would be great, but it doesn't work from a organizer point of view because then the days are way too long and you can't rent the venue.
No, exactly. There's indeed a lot of other logistic issues that I think every player should be very well aware of, that if you're an organizer, it's not just, of course you want to provide all the players the best experience and have good games of Pokemon over a weekend, say. But if you only have your venue until a certain time, well, you have to, play by those rules as well. But what choices do I have? Well, as a TO, I can either do best of 3 in Swiss, or I can do best of 1. And best of 1 is typically set at 30 minutes. I do sometimes see that you can set up the timer for that. But then we come back to the, if I do best of 1 Tord, what's the problem? Lower variance, right? Or sorry, higher variance, my bad. Whoa.
Yeah, so I mean that's always been the argument for keeping best of 3 instead of best of 1, right?
Yeah.
That like with best of 3, then you remove some inherent variance from the game because you're playing a card game, right? So it's always the argument. Oh, I break the game and then I didn't get to play, right? So that's like the main one. But you have to like put it up against each other, right? So I think that's like main argument right now for like keeping best of 3, but like with more and more focus on the time aspect as well, I think that will make for a less enjoyable tournament experience too. And you can say like at the end of the day you're there to try to have fun again, right? Like at an event, and I don't know, at this point I think it's would be more fun for more players to play a best of 1 over best of 3 just to remove the time aspect. Yes, it will come with more variance, and yes, you will see people have crazy runs with newer decks and like maybe newer players even, right?
Yeah.
And you can say try to be elitist and say that should never happen, right? But I think it could be fun.
I definitely think it's interesting, but I think what people are going to be very upset about, say, is that, but I'm here to play this seriously. I devoted a considerable amount of time. My main goal is to get championship points and qualify for Worlds or hit the prize money or whatever, competitive target that they have. And of course, those players, they won't like it. But I think the point is here, when you're comparing, say, best of 3, and a lot of people are, say, talking about we should do best of 1 instead. I don't know about you, but I lived best of 1. Well, actually, I know you did back in the day as well. We both lived best of 1 Swiss, and when we had the shift to best of 3, I don't know about you, but I was very content with that shift back then.
Yes, I was very happy originally with that shift as well. I also felt that like it removed a lot of variance, and like it had all these great points to it as well.
Yeah.
I think like when we did the shift though, a normal game of Pokemon wasn't 25 minutes plus, right? Like it was faster. I remember like a series finishing like a lot more back in the day.
Yeah.
I remember like we had these type of decks that we had like basic rush decks that could attack turn one and they were worth 2 prices, right? So like it kind of makes sense that the game's finished. Like you're playing very few turns and like the engines were fast, right? Like so
And I think also when
yeah.
we go back to around the time when the shift was made, donks was a thing. And that was one of the main arguments to shift to a best of three, because you had many
Yes,
games that people didn't even get to play because I flipped over, say, a Sableye and the game was over.
exactly.
That
So
happened.
yeah,
No, so
I think it made sense at the time, at the very least.
but okay, I think we already hit a lot of cool things about like what is the ups and downs of the current thing. But I think what a lot of people are interested in are there any potential things to solve this? And I think the first one we should maybe just continue talking about is best of one, because suppose we shift to best of one, and that's one thing I've heard coming again and again. Why don't we just do best of one? Sure, but then we play more rounds because, well, assuming it's 30 minutes now instead of 50, we essentially gain 20 minutes roughly, and then over the course of 9 rounds, you gain a lot of time to play, say, more rounds. Say you play 13, 14 rounds of Swiss instead. Would that be a thing? What do you think?
I think that could be a solution. Like it from a player perspective, it does sound pretty good because you get to see more matchups, right? Which is a good thing because then
Yeah.
like you hit that one weird deck that normally could impact your tournament run quite heavily, right? Um, but if it's just one weird deck out of say 13, right, then
Yeah.
like you decrease some variance in matchups as well. You just get to play against more people and more matchups, and that's a good thing. But I hear that this might be a little bit more difficult for the organizers again because this means more pairings, right? More
I
rounds.
was I
What
was
do you
gonna
think about
say.
this?
So I've been so for people who don't know, I used to also play a lot. I still play, of course, but the last year I spent mainly judging, so I got to get a review on, say, the inside of things a little bit. And indeed, from the organized perspective, having more rounds leaves more openings for delays in that way. And not only there, but suppose you have a game of best of one. That doesn't mean some games they will take a long time to finish. Then you for each round you add, it's an each additional potential of something running over time, granting extensions. The worst thing as a judge we had often was we want to make things fun, fast, fair, all these things, right? But the point is, if we had a time extension from a deck check or from a very difficult rulings call, you add 20 minutes. Each additional round you add is an additional risk of this happening. So from an organized perspective, it's not about printing the pairings. I really trust the slip runners and the Hive we're working, and often they're super efficient on this. So I honestly think they can pull it off. But the risk of, say, these extensive rulings coming in the way, or for whatever, just a general risk, will actually add up for an even longer tournament. I think. That's at least my guess, I would say.
Yeah, I think that sounds very fair as well. Like, especially with the size of the events these days, there's so many people, there's so many potential um, matches that can have some sort of dispute or conflict, right? So
That's indeed something that we see now.
yeah,
Like last season is gone. We saw EYC break the record. We saw NAIC further, break the record. And we need to. That's a discussion for maybe another day. How a tournament format would handle this, like how the structure of the general event. But on best of three, best of one, these solutions here, yeah, best of one more rounds does sound appealing for some. You get to, like you say, you get to see more decks, more Pokemon. You don't get ruined by that one bad weird deck that you meet that you happen to have an auto loss to. We heard that too many times. But
Mhm.
what about other things out there? Do you have maybe potential other solutions to this besides just best of one more rounds?
Yeah. So an interesting solution that like I posted, it was not my idea. Bear that.
No.
I was simply just like echoed
Yeah,
what I heard other friends talk about, especially like Benji Pham, like been a big fighter for this for like months or years.
that's
Um,
also where I got it from, to be honest. So yeah.
yeah, and that is the best of two potentially the structure you can have, where instead of playing 3 games of Pokemon, you're playing 2 games of Pokemon against the opponent. So and getting 1 point for each game, because then both players have some sort of incentive always to finish the game. If the game doesn't finish, okay, you don't get a point, right? That's the thing, and it's the change that requires the least like adjustments to the current system. Like a game normally still 25 minutes. You're playing 50-minute rounds, perfect. 25 times 2, that's 50. You get to play 2 full games, and that's great.
So you're just assuming we stick at the 50 minutes, right? Because that's easy, right? You just stick at the 50
Yeah,
minutes.
sure. You can still stick at 50 minutes. Best of 2, you get 25. Math checks out, right?
Would you still do plus 3?
Yeah, sure. You can still do plus 3. That should be okay as well. I think like there's probably multiple systems out there that are viable, right? But having a system that just incentivizes both players to want to finish the series is great. Now they have best of 1 in some countries, right?
Yeah.
And I have heard that there is sometimes like they have incentive to finish the game, because it's the same thing there. Like a tie is a double game loss.
Yeah.
So they both have incentive to finish the game there as well. But I heard about like pettiness there as well, where like people will not, like people losing, they will just not let the game finish to, screw over the opponent again. Which sounds very weird because it messes you up again. Like it messes up your opponent's win percentage, which could hurt you at the end of the day too. But apparently that's the common thing over there.
But think about it. Like, yes, it messes up your opponent's win percentage, assuming that's still a tiebreaker. We're just assuming everything else stays the same, right?
Yeah.
But then by not granting your opponent the points also means there's less people above you. Could that also be something they will see? Less people.
Yes. That's definitely a thing as well. I know like a lot of people playing this game. It's a very social game, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
So like you'll usually have friends at the event as well. So by you dragging someone down with you then help your friends again, because now they have one less competitor with that many points.
Yeah, and I guess the whole notion of you can get a lot more arguments on this, and I like the appeal of this. I must say it's very interesting, and I think also one thing from my say academic sense here, I would love to just simulate a tournament running with this, like to see how the points cutoff work and how all that works. But in terms of this gameplay, it sounds very interesting, and indeed, not very much change to the overall tournament, I would say.
Yeah, that was kind of like why I like this, swap as well, because it requires the least amount of the change I seen from the alternatives again. Like you simply just start counting the games, right? And you just never start the last one. Like if you won 2-0, you get your 2 points. If you won 1 game, then you get 1 point.
Yeah, and it could be that you are called in the middle of game 2, and then your opponent gets 0 points, right? And you get 1 point. Say you won the first game. That would be the case, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Then both of you haven't played fast enough to finish game 2, but then no one gets a point, which like hurts both players, right? But both of you wanted the second game to finish, so that's the thing. You're just creating some sort of incentive for both players to want to finish that game, so you don't have these awkward scenarios where like one player wants to finish but the other one really doesn't, and then they can just sit there and take pointless actions just to waste the timer.
Yeah, and then we're talking about something that actually that should get penalized, right? Because if you're just taking pointless actions to drain the clock, well, that's stalling. But I think also one thing this leaves open for is IDing is still very possible here, right? Like in this system. In this potential system, you can just ID and take a tie, right? 1 point each.
Yeah, of course, you can still do that. And ID will at that point be stronger as well, because 1 point is that would be like getting 1.5 point in the old system, right? When a win was 3 points, right? So an ID would be like a little bit stronger here.
Yeah, you have that discussion over in football back, because they also used to just have 2 points for a win, 1 for a tie, 0 for a loss. They used to have that and introduced 3 points to make it more exciting, actually back in, the 90s, I think. But the point was also like every time there's a tie in any league game anywhere, there's a point lost essentially, right? Because there's only 1 point awards each team. The third point goes to no one. It's just in the void.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the same thing as we were doing. We're voiding points, right?
Yeah.
Which makes it very difficult to figure out, how many points you need for Top Cut, because you never know how many points went to the void, right? So
exactly. This is interesting. Something I would definitely try myself, also look into it. So I guess if it's a Benjamin idea, thanks Benjamin for raising this one. This is an interesting one for sure. Maybe he has something to say, can add to it. That's what we have a comment section below for. But let's move on. There's still some more things to talk about because this doesn't finish the whole thing. There's also just a very simple thing, and this is one we have a little cheat sheet here, but I put on the list here because actually something I've done as a TO before. So yes, I TO'd events before. Actually, I was not TO at that event. I think I was one of the judges, but nevertheless, we had a Danish Open.
Yeah.
You believe that? I believe you played that one as well. I even believe, Tord, didn't you? Danish Open in Copenhagen, Allerød, over in the Copenhagen area.
That's possible. Many years ago, right?
We had a lot of Norwegian players there. In any case, maybe you snuck in as well. Yeah. But the point was there. Like it was very open to, at least the rules allowed us to. And what we just did, we said, okay. Normally, when we have 50 minutes, we spend 10 minutes overlay and about downtime, whatever, between the rounds, the turnover time they call it, right? But why don't we just try and increase to 60 minutes? Because at that time, at least, many games just did finish. They finished before time and finished around the 50-minute mark. So if we just extended it to 60 minutes, the amount of ties would just become much lower. And we, at least in that event, had great success with it. But let's put out a few things. The format was a little different back then. I believe this was 2016. Don't hold me up for it. Sure. And that was, of course, different than today. But still, it was a valid, experience. And we had lower ties, and of course the event size, we were somewhere between 100 and 150 players, which nowadays is considered very small. Funny enough, back then it was, I would call that
massive.
It was huge. It was nice to play a 100+ man event, but what about that, Tord? What about we took the current system, we extended the round to 60 minutes? Would that break everything apart?
I actually really like this solution as well. And I think there could be some arguments here that you might, funnily enough, maybe even save time somehow, but because you will reduce a lot of these, judge calls on like, when was time called, right? And maybe again, like games will finish more naturally, right? So you have less disputes. So I think this like the 10-minute increase, because it's kind of subtle. It's not, you're not adding, the 25. You're not going to 75, right? No. But the 10 minutes is definitely like a massive help, because there's a lot of game tree scenarios that could be fixed with 10 extra minutes for sure. That does solve a lot of issues.
I think what we currently also see very often is time is called after 50 minutes, and then players, this is also annoying as a judge, you see players slow down.
Because now they have all the time in the world, right? So there's no timer anymore.
No, and then actually that's not really true. You have to keep pace of the game. Like how many slow play penalties I have given after time was called. And players, some of them, they understand. But some players, they're really confused. They're like, how can I get a slow play penalty when the time's up? Like, these kind of things. But the point is, you have to keep pace of the game still. And adding 10 minutes, it could very well work, and I think that actually is something they could put on the table. Actually, I believe it's actually just allowed. We could actually just do it as a tournament organizer, but then you first have to, convince a tournament organizer, and you're still running the risk that suppose it just takes one game to go overtime by 20 minutes. But I think it's worth trying for, say, smaller SPs could try it out. Like you have SPs around the world with 100, 200 players. And then this could be a good testing ground for just extending the round timer. That's the simplest solution ever.
Yeah, I don't mind the try to increase with 10 minutes, because I think that you will lose less than the 10 minutes, like in total. So you probably, I don't know, netto lose some time, right? But I don't think you lose as much as the 10 minutes. Like it will help pay for itself a little bit at least, right?
I think also there's one thing you could do here that, to suppose we increase round time by 10 minutes. Then some tournament organizers say, we don't have time for this. Like, at least there's too much risk here. What you could do, it's still possible as a tournament organizer to cut around the Swiss. But then a lot of players would go like, oh, but then tiebreaker and everything is madness, and it's going to be a lot of people bubbling. But then you can also counteract that with what we've seen before, the asymmetric top cut, right? So suppose I propose the following, and let me hear your 2 cents on this. We extend the round best of 3, 60 minutes. At the same time, we cut around a Swiss, but introduce an asymmetric top cut. This, of course, is talking about one-day Swiss events. Like, I know this will become different. We can also talk about it for a 2-day, but just imagine we have a one-day event, 150 players. We now play one less round of Swiss, and then we introduce an asymmetric top cut instead. How would that sound?
Sounds okay. I mean, you still get that one extra round anyway. Those like, do you actually save any time if you do the symmetric cut?
I think actually you may say, okay, I actually think we lose time because assuming the single elimination round is 75 minutes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But you could, I think you are allowed just to make them 60-minute also, then you have the same around the board. That's one way to do it, to save the time up again. But then again, in the asymmetric round, that's the extra round. It's very few games we're talking about. We're talking about maybe 1 till 4 games. That's playing instead of 70, 80 games playing, which makes it less risky from that sense.
That is true.
I think.
So it'd be, would be about the same then, though, like, because you're still not like losing a round all in all. It's still a round going on, right? But
it's still a round, but it's just a round that's for less people, say.
it's an easier round at least, right?
Also from a judge perspective, everything. It's like it's easy to just watch a few games, and then you can be 2, 3 judges on. You can literally overman the show, or people can do other stuff and whatnot. But it's definitely something I thought that could be an idea. And again, these small twists here are all within the rules still. I don't know actually if I can introduce asymmetric top cut. The only reason I'm proposing is because we've seen it before. Pokemon have done it before. They did it with the Open, I believe, 1 year, 2 years. They've definitely done it before. But okay, that's just one solution. What about, let me see. I got one more interesting one. This is a little more, say, creative take. But hey, creativity sometimes solves it. And I just want to hear your input on this. So, hockey. You know how they play in ice hockey, right? And we have a lot of, especially if I talk to the Finnish player base, they know all about it. And they're probably going to scold me for using wrong terms or something. But point being, in hockey, at least in ice hockey, if there's a tie after, well, there are 3 periods they play, right? 3 times 20 minutes. Again, don't kill me for this because I'm not a hockey expert. Then you will extend the time. So you keep playing until winner's found. And then, of course, they go into, penalty shootout after that in their special way. But imagine it for Pokemon now. We play best of 3, 45, 50 minutes, whatever the timer is. We play against each other, Tord. I win the first game, you win the second game. We don't finish. That is, that there's no clear winner of the match. Then we continue playing until a winner is found. Or at least somebody is ahead on prizes, like in single elimination, right? Like you can implement those rules for ease, right? And then you would say, okay, but if you won in extra time, you only get 2 points for winning, and the one who lost in extra time gains 1 point for winning. Or sorry, 1 point for losing at that point. Whereas if you just won in ordinary time, you will gain all 3 points and I take 0. So the only difference here really is, if time is called and there's no clear winner on the table, you keep playing until a winner is found, following just, say, top code rules to make it shorter, and then you gain points a little differently. How does that actually sound? I thought about it. I just wrote it up just to, throw it out there. Yeah. Maybe somebody will burn me for it, but hey.
It does sound okay. I'm not sure because I'm all about like the incentive for both players to always want to play at a pace that just makes sense, right? Like nothing artificial, right? I think this one also like introduces a little bit artificialness by like if you're playing game 3 and like one of you are in a demanding lead, right? Then it's still high incentive for one of you to want the time to run out before you win, right? So that you can steal that 1 point. So that the opponent doesn't get the full 3 points, but you get away with one of them still, right?
Actually, I think I just found a bigger issue even. Suppose I'm just up 1-0. Then we're back at the same incentive that I don't want game 2 to finish at all, because otherwise...
and if you still get 3 points for that, yes, then you also have that problem too.
Okay, oh, that's good. Then that's shut down immediately, unless somebody has a quick fix or whatever out there. But no, it's that's why we just bring them to the board and see what it is. Maybe we should actually just ask people, hey, guys, anybody out there, anybody watching, any comments below, throw it in. What do you have alternative tournament structures? Because, well, we just discussed a few here today. And before we end today, any other structure we've forgotten, Tord? Anything else you think that could be worth saying?
I know there's definitely some more alternatives out there, but these are the ones that I've been thinking the most of. I think best of 2 would feel better than best of 1, at least. You still play more games of Pokemon, so inherently slightly less variance there. The best of 2 might just be the easier solution with all the points we talked about. It requires the least change, right?
I think this is also, I'm going to give it some thought as well, because what I really like about the best of 2 scenario is that it doesn't require much else change to the structure itself. We can still play the same round of Swiss per se. We can still play the same whatever. What I just really want to know is how the point distribution would land up. Maybe just have to ask Robin to do this or something like that, or any of our other players who like to do this. Maybe Jake can do this. See all the people do all these things.
Yeah, I heard when I introduced the concept again, well, not my concept, but when I introduced the concept again, there was a lot of worry about how would control decks work in this, because typically they are slower, right? So say in 50 minutes they're able to win one game at the very least, and then you win 1-0, right? And then get the full 3 points for the series. But in this system, they would probably only be able to still play one game and then struggle to finish the second game again and only get 1 point, and then over the course of the event then just be ran out, right? You wouldn't be able to grab enough of those.
That actually is quite worrisome as a control player. Myself, I love to play it, but that would also mean that if the format provides such cards, you would have to play win faster cards. What do I mean by that? Back in previous formats, we would play Team Rocket's Handiwork to speed up the process a bit if you got a lock going, or you would play Bunnelby or any other middle attacker. Sometimes the format just doesn't offer these solutions, but it's also annoying your control player would have to sacrifice deck space to actually include this when you wouldn't really have to. So I can see the problem here as a control player.
Yeah, I can see it as well. In my idealistic world here, right? I was thinking that, okay, as soon as you establish your win condition, because that usually doesn't take 50 minutes, right? That usually takes 15, 20. Then opponent sees that, okay, I actually don't have any win conditions, and if I want a point here, right? Because they also want points, right? When you play against a control player, they can try to be lucky to still get the point, but they still want one because the alternative is 0. So then they can be okay, cool. You probably have me here, or you definitely have me here. So I'm not gonna sit here and let you stomp me for the next 30 minutes and then not even have a chance of getting the point in game 2. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna concede as soon as you establish your win condition, and we go to game 2, and then we're gonna rush through game 2, and I can probably stall it out if I want, but I don't have to, and it doesn't gain me because then my opponent's win is worse again, right? So at that point, I should just concede, right? But then we're back to the pettiness, especially control decks. Is for some reason people don't like to play against them, and they feel this control guy doesn't deserve the points. I should just
No, I had that a lot. You play against players, they're oh, my day is just ruined. I get to play against control, blah. And one thing I was just thinking about this best of 2 system, how actually opponents win will be calculated.
Yeah.
Would it be the average amount of points your opponent got instead of average win rate? You would have to change the opponent's win a bit, right? Because how is me winning one game and then not finish or get 1 point from a match? How is that calculated as my opponent's win?
I think that would probably be the best solution. Like it would be the average point score of your opponent that you want to be as high as possible. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and again, it's actually quite easy to calculate, to be honest, because you just look at all the opponents you had and you see, okay, how many points did they score? How good were my opponents? That's one thing. But on the control topic, I think it was a really fun thing because now we mentioned Benjamin Pham as well. Have a little funny one on that one. So, surprise, surprise, I play control of the League Cup and I met Benjamin. I think we were in a top cut scenario, but in any case, I think he knew that this was not a good place to be in terms of a matchup. But I established the lock after, say, 5-10 minutes, and he refused to yield for full 50 minutes. Like, even though he knew, he just wanted me to sit there, and I don't know what he said, but it was more like the point like, hey, you chose to play control. You're going to sit here the whole time now and do your lock for the next 50 minutes so you don't get the satisfaction of finishing the game beforehand. You could get these scenarios, but also in all honesty, if I play control in this best of 2 system and you say in an optimal world your opponent should know, okay, you have me, let's play the second game, but you do also have a lot of opponents who honestly believe, even if they're caught, they believe there's a way out. And it could very well be, but they mistakenly believe, or for whatever reason, one person is wrong or whatnot, or the chance is just so small, but they sit there and drag the time unnecessarily long. That will happen. But again, now when I got to think of it, doesn't that already happen now?
Yeah, so like the alternative isn't that much better, I guess.
No.
it's the same thing.
And then we're back where we started. What is the alternative? What is the good, the pros and cons? There's no, I think, one thing we quickly learned from just our little discussion here is that, at least far as I can see, and maybe what you can see also here, there's no like, silver bullet to this as it is right now. There's always going to be some kind of downside.
Yeah.
Interesting. Any words for the viewers out there, Tord? And then I think it's time to finish up for today.
Yeah. So, no, I think I'm pretty happy with all the bullet points we talked about. I got to say, I think most everything of what I wanted to in on this topic. So I'm pretty happy with it, and thank you again for taking time and like making some content and awareness around this as well. Like apart from like the one tweet I'm doing, like this gives a little bit more depth to everyone interested in.
I always I like these kind of things, and you pique my interest on this, and I'm also just happy to help the community because people should just know. And maybe we're all wrong. Maybe there's something better out there, or maybe we are already at the best. Who knows? But in any case, I think it's good to have the discussion, and I would also like to thank you just for taking the time because I know you're a busy guy. And
no worries.
If anybody out there watching this have some comments about this, well, feel free to post it below. We want to hear your opinion, and well, we're all here to learn at the end of the day. And with that said, thank you, Tord, and thanks to everyone for watching this. And I hope you enjoyed this, say, class in Stefan's classroom, and I hope to see you back for another class in Stefan's classroom. Bye bye, everyone. Bye. Thank you.